every speaker says, you don't want to be in the green room, but you're like, I am in the green room. What do I do? You can smell on people if they're trying to get something from you.
Yeah, that's true. I made a vow. I will not talk to any big leader. A couple months later, I'm in a green room with Tim Keller. It was one of the almost awkward first conversations I ever had. If you're like trying to take often, it's stressful.
Yeah, I love that.
I've got nothing to gain. I've got nothing to prove. I've got nothing to lose. I've got nothing to earn. Like, I just have people to help.
Well, Grant, it's amazing to have you in Minnesota, and there's so many things we could talk about because you have so many interests, your hands are in so many different areas. Mm-hmm. For people who don't know you, you are a networker, you do amazing leadership retreats, you help train and coach churches, you're a teaching pastor. I mean, you do all sorts of different things, mm-hmm. and there's probably 15 more that I missed, and you now live in Franklin, Nashville?
Nashville, for sure.
Nashville. You're like, I'm not a Franklin person.
No, I'm
not. But thanks for being on. I'm glad you're in Minnesota, and I'm glad we get to chat today.
Yeah, bro. I think, what age were you when I met you?
Well, I was trying to think back to that. So I remember how we got connected. I'm trying to remember our first time we met, because you met my dad and one of our team members in a green room.
Okay.
And I think you were just sharing about something you were doing. This is before.
I think it was Catalyst Conference. And I think he said, yes, you need to meet my son. And I think within a week or two of meeting you, I feel like the way I actually got to know you, because we share a room together, and I haven't done that with many people. I remember that, yeah. Because I invited you to Guatemala because I was taking some young leaders.
Well, I'm trying to remember, did we meet before that, or did we meet like
I don't think we could have gotten much time together. But my point of bringing it up is just from day one, you've always been like hungry, driven. Even hearing you talk about like writing, I gotta assume if you love writing, you love reading. Yeah. And I just appreciate young people who are like thinking and thoughtful. Yeah. And love ancient and old too, because I think that's where a lot of richness and authority comes from.
Yeah, my goal is to read 100 books this year, and
just the cliche goal we all have.
I know. I'm on pace. I think at the time of this, it's like 4, but I gotta probably by the time this releases, I need to be at like 8 or 9. But
what did you hit last year?
Last year I did 40, and so I'm like, I think I could do more, but I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I just wasn't intentional. Like now I'm reading every night before bed. Yeah. And what I calculated, I need to read an hour and 20 minutes every day. So if I read an hour and 20 minutes every day on average, again, every book's a different size. Some are small, you get them done quick. Others are long. Yeah. One of the books I'm reading is by Dostoevsky, which is like 600 pages. And so I'm like, that one's going to be a long one, but I'm reading another one that's 80. So they'll even out. But yeah, I typically read before bed and then do audiobooks because we drive around between the campuses and locations and things. And so that's my goal, an hour and 20 minutes every day.
It's good.
Yeah.
Last question, sorry.
I'm happy to be interviewed. Okay. Sometimes it's nice,
Yeah, no, I
this is why you're good at developing people.
Yeah, well, I feel, we both do podcasts. Yes. And I always tell my guests is like, ask questions too. I know it's hard because many people come in and is like, okay, what's the next question? What's the next question? But I'm like, especially if it's called Talking Church, like we'll talk. But I feel like it becomes a conversation. And I am curious because I'm curious if I can count on one hand how many young leaders I know who have read 40 books a year, or have a goal of reading 100. And so what would you say is like the number one standout book you read last year? And especially what's one of the most overrated books you read, if something comes to mind? Yeah,
it's my favorite book I read last year, I actually read it twice, or I read it for a second time, was Mere Christianity. Yeah. And the reason why I like it so much is because I actually think, and again, people are gonna be like, whoa, but C.S. Lewis, he threaded this needle of denominations with Mere Christianity. And honestly, I think you do that well. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about, is how you thread this needle between all sorts of different backgrounds to where people don't, I don't know, not that they don't get along, but they're just not in relationship with each other. And so when I go to your events, retreats, it's connected. So C.S. Lewis, I just think, as an Anglican, I think he has a unique position to kind of bridge between Catholic, Protestant, and even the time that he was writing in the 40s, 50s, like during Mere Christianity was during World War II. And so there's just a lot of, with all the chaos in our world and everything, to then think, no, let's just focus on the points of Christianity. So that was one that, even though I had read it before, I read Diary of Anne Frank again, and that one, that's such an interesting book because as a kid, I thought this is stupid. Like this, we're reading this girl's diary.
Mm-hmm.
But then as I read it this year as a 29-year-old, I thought, oh my goodness, to get in somebody's head is crazy. An overrated book? That's a good question. I'd have to look at my notes because there were definitely some books that I read where I'm like, man, that's, I think that most books are, you can learn a lot from, but there were some, like here's one that's kind of savage. I actually just finished it. The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I think it's a good book. I think it's more of like it should have been a chapter long.
Yeah.
It was drug out, and I was listening to it and I thought this could have been one chapter. And even though I did finish it, that would be an overrated book to me. And I love Simon Sinek.
Yeah, but some books could be a blog. Yeah. And what's hard about the publishing world is you could do like one really, really good message, and then you get approached like, you should write a book on that.
Totally.
And if you don't have like the discernment, then you will write a book that should have been a really amazing blog or article.
Totally.
But then you're like, yeah, we've all read books where it's like 2 chapters in, and then they have to keep writing because they signed a contract, and it's just like okay work.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about your journey I talk about this bridge building, like, did you think this is what I want to do? I want to be a networker. I want to be someone who's a trainer. Cause there's a difference in ministry I'd say there's kind of 3 lanes being in ministry. One is I'm on staff at a church. And then the other is I work at a nonprofit, like a more charitable nonprofit or needs-based. And then there's kind of the coach, the trainer, networker type person. And you kind of land in that, but then you also are like, I want to stay connected to a local church. Was that something you always felt, I'm not going to stay at a church? Because you didn't grow up really like super strong in your faith. So maybe talk about that journey.
God, so many things.
Sorry.
Let's see, that comes to mind just to say it. Well, one, let's clear the ground is you keep using the word networker, and most people don't like the word networking, and it comes with baggage.
I like the word.
Okay, so you like it, but I think most people don't want to be called a networker. I think a redemptive word for it, or just some nuance, is instead of being a networker, I would think of it as like a kingdom connector.
Yeah.
And there's a person in the Bible I don't think ever gets credit for being a networker by our terms, is Paul. Like, that dude is a name dropper. He's constantly naming people.
Oh yeah.
You look at like Romans 9, and he'll be naming people like, don't forget to say hello to this person, and let's not forget miss this lady. And like it'll be name after name after name. I don't know the biblical like nourishment it's supposed to do for me, but it shows like this dude would stay deeply in a place, and then he'd move on to another place and move on to another place.
Suppose like even as I process it, network is what's like my network. It can seem self-serving versus connector is a little bit more, no, I'm here to help you versus like, look at my network and how good. So I can see that.
Yeah. And I don't think networking is bad too. I think it gets bad baggage, but if you have a calling on your life or a passion or a purpose, like, you should walk into a room and think, man, who could I get to know who could advance that and help that? Hopefully the calling you have is serving others as outside of yourself, but I don't think that's bad. I just think, I would say a networker goes into a room and thinks, who can help me advance my mission? And a connector walks into a room and thinks, also, who here should know someone else here? Or when I meet someone, I might be like, I don't know what I could do with this connection, but I know someone you really should know. And so there's a guy named, there's a book called Give and Take by Adam Grant. It's one of the best books on, I think, generous relationships. And he talks about this guy called Adam Rifkin. Apparently Fortune magazine named Adam Rifkin the most connected man in America. He's out of Silicon Valley. Forbes actually did an article on him, and he kind of came up with this phrase called the 5-minute favor, where we all, no matter if we are a networker or not, we all could do what he calls a 5-minute favor. And that's like, you meet someone and you think, based on, especially if they have a calling or they're going in a certain direction, they're trying to navigate challenges, you think, who should I connect this person to who has similar passion or similar industry or is navigating the same thing? So it's either a connection, a resource, or feedback. So you're like, can I give them feedback on this thing they're doing? I can take 5 minutes to do that. So even if you're like the busiest leader ever, we all could take 5 minutes out. He tries to do that once a day. So like every day I'll do one 5-minute favor. No matter how busy I get, I could do that. And I think I've just done a lot of that. I've done a lot of that for a lot of different people. And I think for us as Christians is one of my favorite things to do is when, and I think a connector appreciates when they connect one person to another person, and then 2-3 years later, you find out they are doing all this stuff together, and you had like 5 minutes in their story, and you did connect them, which was pivotal. But after that, it's not like you fostered everything. And I've seen that a lot, and it just is awesome, because you are, Lord willing, I'll be like seeing fruit growing on other people's trees that I didn't really do much other than plant the first seed, and then they took it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I even think too, my dad said, hey, you should connect with my son. And like, we're here now. And you think of all then the ripple effects of different people that have been met at different events. I mean, I think even meeting some of the most important people, some of your best friends, spouses. I mean, just today we were at a staff meeting, and we were honoring someone who had been here for 10 years. And she said, I met my husband here. I met some of my best friends here. Just thinking about how crazy that the decision to plant this church led to all these people. I mean, probably thousands at this point who have met their spouse in our church or in a small group or connected in that way. It is crazy to think of how one decision can impact that.
Yeah, there's a lot of connections in the Bible that we just don't think of it as connections. But like, I'm thinking about, I mean, Boaz and Ruth to the, who was it, was like sleep. No, well, Jesus at the well with the woman, like that one connection, just, I mean, it seems like just real quick. And then she goes and like reaches most of her city for the gospel. Was it Jacob? Someone at the well, and then he meets his wife just at that well.
Oh, yeah. They're looking for they sent him off to look for his wife, and then she's at the well, and they're like, well, yeah, what about you?
I think when you are really good at connecting and you've helped a lot of people, then you start, like my philosophy is always, there is a person for every problem. Like if I have, right now I have a door problem, like there's a lot of water that's coming to the bottom of I have a French door to the back of my house, and we have like duct tape on it for the last 6 months. And I'm like, I've got to fix this. And I'm like, I'm too connected to not know. If I don't know someone who does doors, I know someone who knows someone who does doors.
I have a very similar problem. In our dining room, we have a curtain rod that pulled out of the drywall and is literally just hanging by a thread.
Yeah.
And I say I'm going to fix it, or someone, and I got a quote from a handyman, but it was way more money than I wanted to pay. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, I'm going to fix it, but I haven't done it. So I need that connection.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, the guy, I just found this, or not found it, I just realized. And I think if you add prayer, like connection and prayer, because God's like church, I think, has all the people. Like we actually have the people, I believe, who could solve a lot of the world's problems, especially within our own family, like the church body. Like the drummer for Way Church also does doors for most of the time. And so once I think if you pray, like again, Ananias, and when Saul becomes Paul, right away, God says, hey, go to Ananias, and tells Ananias, hey, I want you to help this guy. Ananias was scared to do it, but God's connected them. The Ethiopian eunuch and Philip. Like if I was one of the disciples and seeing all these disciples going to cool places, and you want me to just go to this road, but then he has the story connected to the Ethiopian eunuch, who apparently went back to Africa and was a major part of bringing the gospel to Africa. Like that's a connection, but I don't think we think of that as a connection. But those like little quick moments, my favorite connector and like hero disciple is actually Andrew from the Bible. Do you know any stories about Andrew?
You don't, there's not a lot.
There's not. It is a bit of a trick question, so I'm not trying to stump you, but any stories you know about Andrew? Yeah.
I mean, in fishing?
Yeah, good. So there's only two that I've found, really big ones, I guess. And maybe there's one other minor moment, but the main story is the beginning, and Jesus meets Andrew, and immediately it says Andrew went to go get his brother. So he meets Jesus and thinks, you should meet my brother. And his brother's Peter. And so I always think what's wild is then Peter goes on and does amazing things with Jesus. And I think a good connector, kingdom connector, and if you're just networking and trying to advance your mission, that'd be so like frustrating for Andrew. I would have been like, dang, I wish I never introduced my brother to Jesus, because then Jesus latched onto that connection, and them two went and did way bigger things. He became part of the inner circle. On this rock I built my church. So much more time intentionally. And I mean, how many Peter stories do we know?
Right.
Like we don't know almost any Andrew. We know a lot of Peter. And I like to think, this conjecture, we'd get to heaven and be like, bro, do you ever wish that God would have done that with you and not with Peter? And I like to think you'd be like, bro, no, I don't, like, I wasn't doing this for me. I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. And there's ways that I did things that you don't even know about, maybe. And there's things that Peter did that we both collectively impacted so many people's lives. But especially since it's his brother, I like to think that's my brother. I don't compare myself to my brother. I was pumped for my brother in the same way a father would be for his son or a mother would be for his daughter. But the other story about Andrew, actually, that most people don't always know, is whenever they needed the fishes and the loaves, Andrew's the one who made the connection. Like, he said, hey, Jesus, I found this boy who has some fish and some loaves. So again, the only two times I've ever seen stories about Andrew, it's him introducing Jesus to someone. And so I think he's like the unsung hero disciple that we don't know anything about him, but he's known for, we know the stories and the byproduct and the fruit of what he's done because of his relationships.
Well, you talk about that humility, that the hypothetical of if you see him in heaven and what he would say. I do think that is the test of somebody who is a good connector versus someone who isn't, is you can smell on people if they're trying to get something from you.
Yeah, that's true.
You can see if they're doing it because they're in a green room, and you and I have been in many different green rooms, and it's like, sometimes you feel awkward and you wonder, am I supposed to be in this room? Other times you're wondering, should I be out? If it's a conference or whatever it is, there's that tension because you're going, I don't want to be that guy who's, every speaker says, you don't want to be in the green room, but you're like, I am in the green room. What do I do? Yeah. I don't want to be that guy. But then in the same way, I want to steward these relationships, and there might be people I want to meet. Again, we talked about how you met my dad in the green room. There are these moments. How do you steward that? You talk about that 5-minute favor. How do you steward moments of meeting people that maybe it is somebody you've looked up to? You've read their books. They've impacted your life, and you're in the same room as them, and you don't want to come across as the guy who goes, hey, can you come speak at my conference? Hey, can you be on my podcast?
Yeah.
But then in the same way, you do want their insight to your audience that you've stewarded. How do you balance those things? Because you do a good job of it, and you look at the people that are on your podcast, you look at the people that are at your events. There's few events that have as many A-list speakers. I mean, I was at one event, you gave like Matt Chandler like 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what? This is crazy. Like, people that would be the premier speaker are getting tiny slots, and they're not upset about it. So how do you steward that to introduce yourself and start making asks to people without it feeling that way? Because clearly you're doing a good job doing it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I would say first is giving really takes the weight off. Having a posture of constantly giving frees you to have, actually, ironically, authority. But if you're like trying to take often, it's stressful. Like, and I'm thinking right now about how much that applies to being in a green room and asking for something, but also like going on a stage and preaching or being called to some high position and people are looking to you to be in charge. If you're a taker, you got to prove yourself. You have to earn your stripes. You have to perform. And if I'm a giver, I feel a freedom. Like, I'm just trying to help. Like, if you want to help too, if you're the kind of person that likes to help and you like to give, then let's do it. Like, it's wild how many, a ton of big leaders too, and they'll do stuff for free if it's with a pure vision. But if like I'm trying to take, which is we can sense and discern. Yeah, I think that's that's stressful. Like, even thinking about like, dang, if I was trying to like just take. And so I will say this, I've done it the wrong way. Like, when I was 23, I got launched into speaking a lot. And I remember,
what launched you into that?
I was a pity invite for a conference that was about reaching the next generation, but didn't have any next gen speakers at all. And so, I mean, we've all seen that, where it's a whole bunch of great, amazing older generation leaders who do a lot of work reaching the next generation. I just think you should also have next gen people in that conversation, collaborating in the conversation. It's like what I always say is we often talked about the next generation like they're whales. Like, we study them. Oh, 28% of them do this. And my kids, if they're always talking about like their authorities, because like I'm a mom of 3 millennials, like I would hear that in the early days all the time. It's like, well, I'm not a millennial, but I'm a mom of 3 millennials in my house. Or a guy, I'm not a millennial, but I've got 3 grandchildren who are in that generation. I'm like, I'm not a boomer, but I have a mom and dad. That doesn't make me any type of authority on it. And I just, anyway, I think 2 days before this conference, I brought about 400 young people to this conference. They hired me on contract, like stipend for 2 months to get people to come. And I had invested a lot in Dallas, and I knew, and there's so much around connection, but I knew who were the Paul Reveres, if you will. Malcolm Gladwell in Tipping Point talks about how, I don't know if you know this, there was a guy who went apparently the opposite direction of Paul Revere. No one knows his name. And the reason Paul Revere did so well is he didn't just go and shout, "The British is coming," though that's what people think. He went to the right homes in the right towns. And he knew, if you tell this person, he knows everyone, and he knows, and everyone trusts this person. So he just told the most influential in those towns and got the word out quickly. He knew like the chain of communication. The other person did just blast it to everybody, and no one really got the message as much as Paul Revere. And so for me, when that conference came to town, I was like, who are the others who, if you get these 40, you can get hundreds? And all that to say, 2 days before, they asked me, "Hey, we got like hundreds of millennials coming now. Would you speak at this conference?" They put me on the panel. And honestly, I mean, even that's another one where I wasn't trying to give when I went on that panel. I wasn't trying to take, I was trying to prove something, because I was going on the panel and I thought, there's 30 speakers here. I'm the only 20 something, and everyone's talking about millennials here. I need to like defend us. And if you remember, bro, because how old are you?
I'm 29, so I'm right in between. Yeah.
If you remember skinny jeans and participation trophies, and there's a lot of, I feel like millennials got a lot of hate, like for 20 straight years.
I always said, it's your fault. You're the parents that did that.
I don't want to say it's their fault, but I would say specifically participation trophies are the fault of Xers. Like, we were 6 years old. You didn't have to give us trophies. You could have given us Capri Suns like they used to do, but they did, or oranges or something, but they did. And then they blamed us for it. And I was like, I'm going to go up and defend us on that. I'm going to talk about discipleship and how I sincerely, which was true. So it was a little bit of truth, but I was using it and wielding it in a way to prove something. So I was going to say, I think discipleship is the biggest impact on the next generation. And the best young leaders I know all got discipled. The problem is you guys don't disciple anyone. And I was going to talk about how, like, imagine farmers that are like shaking their fist at God and shaking their fist at their plants. And then God's like, do you water them? Do you prune them? Do you take care of them? And he's like, no. And it's like, because that's what I feel like. You guys are expecting what you're not investing. And all these zinger lines that technically could have been good. My heart was to go to bat for them and kind of crush them instead of like inspire them. And God, I feel like, really convicted me physically in my body. I've never felt as much physical conviction the day before. Do not do that. Like, it was in my stomach. I felt bad, and I could tell it was me mentally preparing and spiritually, I thought, preparing. And God's like, that's such the wrong spirit. Like, just no one wants to be crushed into doing something. Inspire them. So I felt like he prompted me to go in instead and just tell amazing stories of how older people influenced and impacted my life. And then you could just hear, and then to say at the very end, and I'll just tell you, the best young leaders I know have people like that too. So it's more like, I want to be like that person rather than, you guys aren't this person. And I got like 16 speaking invites from that. So then I started speaking a lot, and going back to when I said I made mistakes. So I end up probably a couple months later, I'm in a green room with Tim Keller. He's the GOAT in a lot of ways, talking about guys who transcend denominations. Right. I feel like everyone claimed Tim Keller. You could be Presbyterian. You could be, I think you could be, all over the map in charismatic and whatever, and claim or quote Tim Keller. So I was like, I'm going to go up to Tim Keller and talk to him. I had zero agenda or zero things. I just like, he's here. I should talk to him. And it was one of the almost awkward first conversations I ever had. And I made a vow, I will not talk to any big leader unless I have a reason to actually talk to him. Like, it can't be just because. And so now it's like, there are a lot of big people. I've been in the room with them so many times, and people think I know that person. I'm like, I have never talked to them because I don't know what to talk to them about. I haven't had a reason to do it yet.
Yeah, it is that tension, because there's, I don't know that it's like the flesh versus the spirit, but it is this, my own agenda versus God's agenda. And it's like what you were talking about, being sensitive to the Holy Spirit that is speaking to you in, you shouldn't do that. And then it opened doors for you, right? It's like when we listen, when I think about you kind of brushed over this. Hey, I got 400 people to just go to this thing. For many people, that's crazy to even recruit people. I think that's one of the missed opportunities that I just over the coming years, I want to figure out how to have more come and see evangelism opportunities, because I do think that, even in our church, as it's grown so large, we can get so many people that just visit because we're big and because we have good SEO and because it's like, oh, we saw the building there, versus what are the actual opportunities to bring people and evangelize in a way that is more just, no, I'm inviting my friend. And, and I'm not saying we don't do that. We definitely do. But in a city that many people are not Christians or are walking away from God, to say, what can we do to actually bring people? So that's, again, a side note, but I think that the connection point of Andrew, and you talk about the woman that Jesus talks to at the well that brings back all these people, and many say she's one of the kind of first missional minded or missionary people that goes into her town. And so I do think that shoulder tap is interesting, but that Paul Revere story you're talking about, how do you identify the people that you invite to your retreats, the people that you put on stages, that again, you're going to get it wrong sometimes, but you shoulder tap a lot of people that probably early on, people are on these, again, with all due respect to everybody, I'm one of them. These people are nobodies, but then many of them going on to be incredibly influential. What is some of those criteria or, intangibles that you see to reach out to invest in people? Because a lot of your events, you don't charge a lot of money for, you don't charge anything usually. Talk about that.
Yeah. I look for who's pioneering and doing something different. So that's why I said, you saying you're reading 100 books, I'm like, legit, I put you in a pioneering. I'm down to be different. I think, different. You get a whole bunch of people who are cool with being different. Like the comfort you have to have, the confidence, like of saying, I'm known for a lot in our kind of retreat world, as I say, be confident in who you are and comfortable with who you're not. And I think for young people and young leaders, even young pastors, even who know God so well, the being confident in who you are, that's not easy, but it's easier than being comfortable with who you're not, and then leaning into like, I am different here, and screw y'all. I like who I am, and God designed me this way, and there's a gifting in a way that God's going to impact the kingdom. Leaning into that different, and so like even you reading, you said, oh, Grant, you mentioned bringing 400 people to an event. You said you read what? You're like, if I only read 126 minutes, is that what you said?
An hour and 20 minutes a day. Yeah.
I hear that. I'm like, if I only read an hour and 20 minutes a day, I can read 100 books a year. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
like that's normal. You're saying
40
like
minutes
that's
is 60
normal.
books. So.
So no one I know is generally thinking like that, but I want to get a lot of people that like, for them, that's normal. It's normal to be like that different, because then really cool ideas happen. There's just people that are comfortable in their own skin. They're true. They tend to be a little more mature for their age, because when you're young, you're generally trying to figure out who you are, what you stand for, who are your people, what's your thing, though? That's probably the biggest thing. I jokingly but seriously think that the prosperity gospel, I don't want to say it's over, but I think the next generation has moved from a prosperity gospel to a platform gospel. So there's so much pressure to like, what's your thing? What do you do? Like, why are you valuable, basically? And even Christians, I actually say Christians, they might struggle with it more than lost people, because when you're a Christian and you're a young adult, especially a college kid, like the scariest question you could ask them is, what are you going to do after college? They feel this pressure to know their calling, their purpose. A lot of the church messages that resonate with young people, it's very purpose-centric messages. It's not about like just God's going to do this for you and you're going to get more money. It's more like the generation, what do you do if you're the enemy and you're trying to get a generation that isn't driven by money as much as they're driven by purpose? Like they would take a pay cut for a job if they had a position that made a difference in life. And so I think if you can't get them with money, then preach purpose over and over again. So for 10, 20 years, young people have been preached about, God's got a purpose for your life, a calling. There's a shift coming, a breakthrough. It's all very me-centric, I would say. And now it's like God, instead of being a stepping stone to prosperity. He's a stepping stone to our purpose. And I think that's why a lot of young people enjoy, and it's easier for young people today, young Christians, to like nail down their purpose, lean into their purpose, figure out their calling, spend so many hours about their calling. But if you ask like, how much time are you spending with the caller, with your creator, God, it's a lot harder. It's not as natural. And so I look for who's mature enough to like, yeah, like even thinking about connecting, you got to be someone who's, instead of building your own platform or my thing, I'm helping other people do other things. Or, hey, my thing's this and it's not cool, like reading. Or I like people who are in very unique different industries where it's like really encouraging to know Christians are in the Broadway scene or in technology. I just met a kid from London. He's 19. He makes Lego Bible stories and then he stock motions them. That's cool. And I'm just like, I bet that kid got made fun of for some part of his life, but he kept going at it and is beautiful. The way he does it is like aesthetic. And I think for the children or the dads and moms that can come together and like tell Bible stories, his name is Josh Whitehouse, if you want to look it up, but it's like beautiful visually. I like to find, who's pioneering, who's doing things unique. But my big question, a lot of the crew knows that's in this retreat world, is I'll ask, because people nominate others. And I always ask, would you want to go on a camping trip for 3 days with that person by yourself, just you two? And that question is really helpful to find out, not only are they gifted, are they awesome, are they influential, but are they enjoyable? Like, would you enjoy being around them? Because then you really catch the divas or the people that are self-focused, and you're getting very gifted people that are very fun. So that means they probably are givers. They probably are generous, kind, awesome. But if you get a lot of people where they're not just saying, yeah, I'd go on a camping trip, they'd be like, yeah, they're awesome. Yeah. Then I want like 50% of the room to be that kind of like awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we joked about it at the beginning, but it was literally the first time we met, 4 nights in the same hotel room in Guatemala, you know, and but it does take those moments, I think, to either say, oh, we're going to be friends for a while, or I never want to see that person again. Yeah. And I think that's a good question. I think sometimes we live in the world, and maybe it's just the culture here in Minnesota, but it's, we should get together, we should get together, we should get together. And it never actually happens versus let's be intentional. And rather than let's get coffee, let's do something significant and serious. You know, let's actually go somewhere. Let's spend time and money away. But those moments of connection are far deeper and far more real because it's not, oh yeah, I got to run to the next thing. Sorry, you know, good to see you. It's, no, we're actually exactly where we're supposed to be, and we can stay up as late as we want. We can, you know, go wherever. And I do think having those times with people, that's why conferences and retreats, someone asked me a few years ago, they said, do you think conferences, this is after kind of Hillsong was going through a ton of their turmoil, and they said, do you think conferences are over? Because there were several conferences, ours as well, that I was talking to their organizers. Catalyst at that point had just stopped, and they said, is this the end of the church conference? And I said, I don't think so. I think that this is a shifting, but they may get smaller, which I've started to see. A lot of conferences are just doing smaller so that you can actually have connection with people. And there still are the passions and the big ones, but
I think you're right that most conferences are generally dying.
Yeah. But I think they're shifting to be more like that retreat and the behind the scenes, and not like come one, come all. I think people still need the connection though. I don't think they don't need the leadership teachings because you can watch those online. They have a million podcasts that they can listen to. What they need instead is connection and relationship.
Have you ever heard the term content is king?
Yeah.
Do you know who said it? Mm-mm. It's actually Bill Gates.
Okay. Really? That surprises me.
Yeah. So in 1986, Bill Gates said content is king, referring to the internet and the rise of the internet. And his thing was like, whoever creates more so like the most content, not even the best content, will rule the internet. And I think the world today is not in a place where content is king. I think we're super saturated with content. I jokingly say it used to be like, on TV, there was not as many good shows. There's so many, not even good shows, amazing shows. We don't have enough time, or have we paid for the platforms always to watch all the shows we should be watching. But it used to be like, do you watch Seinfeld or do you watch Friends?
Right.
Now it's so many amazing shows. We're unsubscribing from all the different emails we're getting. We're a lot of people are feeling this, like, is there a way for me to get off of my phone and not doom scroll? Like, that everyone generally agrees. My wife works for Barna now, and I was seeing one of their studies that Gen Z generally agrees social media is not good for them.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And so they even know the experiment is over, that we kind of know, do we know what the alternative's not as well? We need guidance there. But I would say instead of content is king, I'm starting to think connection is king for this generation, because content used to be harder to get. You had to go to Blockbuster. Like, I'm thinking about like 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. We're getting old now, because you'd have to explain Blockbuster. Like, imagine if you wanted to watch a movie
right,
and you had to get up. I was like, this is what old people say when you have to explain like your old world of, you had to go get a movie, you had to rewind that movie.
You'd be arguing with your sibling, wondering,
you're right, you might not even get to you might not even get to watch the one you want. Just so many things you wanted to watch, like listen to a song. You had to go to Walmart and buy the CD, and you might only like that one song, but you had to buy the whole CD with 12, 14 songs. And now it's just so much easier to get content. So content now is easier to get. Connection, super hard to get. Connection or relationship, real deep, vulnerable, fun relationships are harder. And so I would say one thing me and Cheyenne, my wife, have started to do is we've tried to find who are a handful of like couples we really, really enjoy, and let's like retreat together and let's say yes to certain events together more, so that we just naturally end up in the same spaces. But we do a retreat every year where we like kind of look at the year and really go deeper in what's going on in our life. And we've ended up saying yes to so many different events, so where it's other people's events, but we're like, hey, did you get invited to that? Did you get invited to that? Or someone might be like, no, I didn't. But like, hey, I'm sure you could get invited too. And we just go to stuff together so that we cross paths all often, even though we all lived in different cities. But that's really, really helped to have. It was from Andy Crouch. He wrote kind of about culture making.
Yeah, he was at one of the retreats.
Yes, at that event. Event you came to at that camp. He talked about that, and he called them, I believe, eulogy friendships. And we are where they would become friends, intentional friends.
Yeah, I remember that.
And hope was till their death that they would tell each other's eulogies. I think he joked and said, whoever's the last living, that would have the second to last would like do a recording,
pre-recorded,
something for that guy's or girl's eulogy. But that really inspired my wife to start thinking through who are like 4 of our closest couple friends, and it's so cool to see how that's happened. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Is I think after college, relationships are very hard to come by, or at least they're not going to come naturally like they used to. You have to work for them. In high school and middle school, those are like some of the easiest, because you're in class, you're doing a lot of shoulder to shoulder stuff together, and sports really does help, I think, a lot with relationships. If you ask most people, what is the most you ever felt like you were a part of a group, a team? There's like so many core memories. It's when they were a part of a sports group and traveling, going, all those moments that like create core memories. I think if I would say content is good and the church needs to focus on content, but also realize it's not as valuable as it used to be, or at least maybe we need to deliver it like Jesus did through relationships. Is there's content, connection, but I think even deeper than that is core memories. Like these days, even my retreats, I'm thinking not just who do I need to connect. I'm thinking, how do I create core memories? And if I can get a lot of good people in the same space for a couple days, they go vulnerable, but also core memories that are like absolutely fun. Those people will stay friends for the next year or 2 or 10, hopefully, and really help each other.
Yeah, I think about my parents' friends, and I've observed it in their life as they grew the church, and being on the ARC lead team and within the Assemblies of God, and there's a lot of different networks that they're a part of and that he helps to lead. And Dino Rizzo, him and my dad were roommates in college. And so
I forgot about that.
So seeing them, we just celebrated our 30-year anniversary as a church this past year, and seeing Dino at our 30-year anniversary, telling stories about them, and then other people, Michael Murphy, different guys that we've been connected with, and having them share about my parents honoring in front of all the leaders of our church. Though, again, that wasn't a eulogy, but it was an example of people that you could call anytime. In that world, in the ARC world, again, they've done a good job of that to stay just good friends at any time. I mean, my dad was down in Florida and he texted Randy Bizet. He's like, hey, let's go golfing. There are just people that you have that kinship with, that it doesn't matter how long it's been. Like, I don't even remember the last time I saw you, but I'm like, oh, great, we're just jumping right back in. that to me is the type of friendship in ministry, at least. And again, this is for mostly people that are in ministry. I find it's hard to be really, really close friends with people that are right next to you in proximity. Not even because of like sibling rivalry, although that could be a component, but it is just like the convenience of being able to see each other at any time versus the intentionality that you talk about. People that live out of state or they live in an inconvenient place, sometimes you force that intentionality because you otherwise wouldn't see each other. Where it's like, oh, we should get together, but you can do it any time.
Yeah.
And so I actually find some of my best friends, and I saw this with my parents too, were people that didn't live in Minnesota, but that they had points of connection, whether it be a conference every year or a retreat that they went on or vacation every 5 years that they'd go on. And I've seen them develop over time being more intentional.
Yeah. I think about Dino Rizzo, and he's an easy core memory kind of guy. He's just a fun guy. So I'm thinking, I forgot that your dad was roommates with him in college. So one of the things that I was thinking, I was like, if they honored the 30 years, I'm sure they got to tell some stories like, you guys know this, Rob, but I could just totally see Dino saying, back in this way, he's like, this is what he was like. And I was thinking, that's what we do when you know you're close to someone, when you have these funny stories and these core memories. And ironically, we'll be presently hanging out and we'll talk about old memories of stories. And you don't do that with acquaintances. You'd only kind of do that with people you're like really close to. And I just think that's something I've really been aiming for is core memories. Like, how do you create memories? Like, I think part of that is like, why not type of lifestyle is like, let's see what happens. Cause those are the things you're like telling the story later when you guys get back together 2-3 years later.
You mentioned camping, and it made me think of, like, who are the people that I have core memories with? It's people I've sat around a bonfire with.
Yeah.
Because a bonfire kind of insinuates there's nothing else happening. There's not a concert. We're not watching a movie. We're sitting there watching fire burn, but we're telling stories. We're talking. There's no agenda. There's no time. The night's already happened, and we're just here by the light of the fire. And I do think that having no agenda, we don't need to accomplish something by being together, I think is the tale of a true friendship. The way I've described it when I led young adults too is your best friends are the people you spend the most amount of time with on purpose. I think sometimes they're my best friend. Are they really? You work together. Yeah. It's not on purpose. You get paid to be together, or you're in college together. It just so happened. But who are the people you're intentional with? That's your real best friend. What do you think distinguishes an event that creates those connections? You do a lot of retreats, you do conferences, you visit a lot of them. What are the ones that are sticking around? Like, why is Passion still happening? Why are these retreats that you're doing still happening? What makes these events the ability to create these core memories and connections versus ones that fizzle out, or you go to and you feel like, I just wasted a couple days?
Yeah, the time when I feel like I wasted a couple days and I go to a Christian event is they just have people talking the whole dang time. I don't know how people sit in a room and listen, or why they'd want to, because that's like, it's almost like we made conference. I've never thought of it this way. It's like doom scrolling through Christian content, but you're doing it live. It's just like, okay, next speaker. We throw in some worship, but I just think, when we create these events, we just like, okay, we always think who needs to speak on what topic, and then we just, who's next to speak, and we just always think about the speaking and the content. And I've just thought about, like, when have I met someone at a conference and stayed connected, and especially done a ton of stuff together. And it's usually when someone's like, hey, y'all want to skip this one and like go to lunch, or hey, tonight we're going to go and hang out late and do this and do that. And it's like late night hanging out with guys. I actually stay connected to that person. We might even do stuff with each other's ministries. So then it's an overflow of that relationship, not just, it helped mutually us. It's like our people benefited from that relationship. And I just think you've got to give time to connect. I think in church, from small moments to respond and talk to your neighbor. Like, I'm a big critic of, we don't give people time to respond to the sermons. Like, we've done so much work to get people to feel welcome, in a posture to receive, like from the parking lot. We're so detailed, like from being welcomed to the parking lot, having a smooth experience checking in your kids, someone greeting you at the door, smiling, welcoming you verbally, getting you seated, even like flashing your lights, you're a new visitor, we get a parking spot for you. Like, we're so intentional to get them in the right mindset and posture to enjoy the church experience, the worship in a certain way, to like get them to encounter and connect with God, soften their heart, settle their soul, and kind of forget for just a consecrated moment all the challenges that are going on in life. And then the sermon usually builds up. It relates in the beginning, stories of, isn't that all of us? Then we talk about the challenging part, like, but what if we could be a people to do this? And you finally convict me or inspire me, like, I do need to do something about that. And then they're like, all right, guys.
In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Yeah. It's lunchtime.
Yeah.
And then no one generally, unless it's someone super intentional, talks about the sermon during lunch, maybe on the car ride back at best. And I just think it's like, why would we not give them? I carve 10% of my sermon at least, so that I can make sure there's time to respond. And that means if you give me 30, I'm going 25. If you give me 45, I want to take at least 10. That's awesome. Now I can take 10 minutes to give them time to talk to their neighbor. I do questions in the beginning too. Like, I want to, like Deadpool, like, I want to break the fourth wall, because it's so much content saturation.
Yeah.
And the content we're giving is amazing. I think that's where it becomes a challenge with pastors. You talk about content, like, this is the gospel we're talking about. This is the best content. And I'm like, yes, but if Jesus thought preaching sermons and big gatherings alone was the way to save people, then we would have seen a lot more of him organizing those events. And I'm a guy who's about the gathering. I want to not forsake the gathering. I'm part of Way Church, and we gather. But he did use the model of relationships, the method, the vehicle of relationships and preaching. So it's a both. It's a both and. We see it at Pentecost. We see it all these other times when there's a gathering, Sermon on the Mount. But yeah, I try to begin my sermon with a question, so I can, let's say I do a sermon just recently on evangelism. So my first question is like, hey, I share a quick story about how hard it is to share the gospel with family and close old friends, like people you know. Something about it's messy, it's difficult. And then I say, is there anyone in your life who's like, it's just hard to share the gospel for? And it's often the person you want to know the gospel so badly. It might be a dad, might be a brother, sister, cousin, best friend from college or high school who's kind of strayed away or whatever. And then I say, turn to your neighbor for like 2 minutes. So now they talk to someone else about, I say 1-to-1 just so they actually can both share. And then they now have thought about evangelism very personally to themselves. So instead of me just trying to convince them evangelism is important, they are beginning with who they care about most and want to know the gospel. So now I'm like, I think they're listening way better, because it's like, how do I apply this to that person I want to know? I want my brother to know the gospel. And it kind of is re-sparking that confidence in me I need to get back to being intentional with him. And then at the very end, I asked them to pray. The person who you shared, whether your mom, dad, close friend, whatever, would you pray and bring fresh faith to that conversation and to that? Because sometimes we settle. Like for my dad, I have not seen a lot of too much spiritual growth, and it can be depleting and saddening when you're like, not only have they not grown, sometimes they've gotten worse. Like for how many parents have kids they prayed so desperately for, their kids are getting farther from God. And so having someone join you in prayer, I likened it to the guys who dropped their friend down, and Jesus said, I saw their faith. And something about seeing their faith, not just his faith, moved God. And so I was like, can you bring fresh faith to that? And so it's very personal, because you shared that with that person who it is. And then at the end, you're receiving prayer to go back into the fight of faith for that person. But yeah, I just think it's like, last thing I'll say on this is to do all those things from the parking lot to the pulpit, of getting their heart and mind ready for hearing a word, but not giving time to respond and connect with someone, or at least time to pause for 2 minutes, listen from God or confess or whatever it may be. It'd be like in basketball, Ben Wallace gets a rebound. He boxed out, did all the details. That's parking lot, if you will. Then passed the ball up quickly, because sometimes you can get a fast break, but you didn't pass it. You just got the rebound. Then you dribbled up. But no, you turned around, quickly got it up court. That person moved it up faster, up the next person up court. It's like very intentional basketball teamwork to get this going. Kobe gets the ball, throws it perfect, like alley-oop to the senior pastor, just now finish it. Shaq dunk this ball. You're right in the key right there. And for some reason, Shaq's about to dunk. He's like, no, okay, let's reset. See you guys next week. And he resets and goes back to the three. Like, it'd be so strange. And I think we do that a lot on Sundays where we go through every like detail to get them in the right space of mind, and then we don't give them time to talk to the Holy Spirit, and then maybe hopefully talk to their neighbor. And if it's a close friend or it's a family member, which often it is who they came with, there's definitely room for that to become a conversation at lunch or going forward, because you're now kind of maybe even committing to, this did resonate with me, and I need to call my dad, or I just need to invite him over, or I need to whatever. It leads to, I think, obedience more when you give that time to respond.
Yeah, I was listening to a Q&A. I can't remember who said it, but they asked about the difference between teaching and preaching. And he said teaching is about imparting something into someone. Preaching is about them applying it to their life. And I do think that application is sometimes, the impartation is good, but the application can be spotty. I think in Pentecostal circles, we do create that room in many ways, but it doesn't always look like response. It's more things. Like, we think it's because it's worship, it's response, which it can be. And I don't mean to
no, I do. Down, I agree. But it is a strong, that's often the response is if like they're like passionately responding in worship.
Right.
Sometimes I do think it helps. That's hard. Yeah. How do you live in the tension of, sometimes it's like, we want to surrender this and you just like go into worship. But sometimes it's like, no, this is a practical thing I need to talk to someone about. And just, if I could just navigate this with someone as my heart's soft on this topic would be helpful. I like what you're talking about, like the application rather than the education or even memorization, but the application is huge. I'm thinking about the Great Commission, a very, very important word that's forgotten in there is, it doesn't just say go and make disciples, baptize in the name of the Father and Son, teaching them. It says not just teach, it says teaching them to obey all that I've commanded you. So it's like, I think we just sometimes limit it to, I taught them deeply. I taught them through a whole expository sermon, but I did not teach them to obey, because I didn't give them time to think through it, respond, give even ideas of, Way Church, I'll give it up to Noah. We just did last week we did a sermon. He did a sermon on technology, and he then said these are going to be 4 commitments you can commit to. From what is going to be some boundaries you put on your phone, like is it going to be an hour? Like put some restrictions on yourself. 2 is, would you commit to not having your phone in the bedroom, like just at all? Just like he said, him and his wife do that. If you feel compelled, he's like, this is a space where you want it to be intimate between you two. You don't want to wake up to it and go to sleep. That shouldn't be your beginning of day and end of day. Just a rule not to have it there. Charge it in the kitchen or something. And he had a couple others, but it's like allowing people to even give a vision. If they don't have vision for it, give them vision for, like, is it a yes or no? But it allows, I just think, that is teaching them and giving them ways to obey what God's saying. And even if you don't fully want to do it, you might see the fruit of it by obeying, taking the first step.
Yeah, I love that. The practical application is something we often, I don't know that we miss it, but it's a point in the sermon, but it's not like the end. And whereas maybe it should be, like how you say Noah ended that, and Noah will be here speaking in a couple weeks. So I'll have to ask him more about that. But I do think that is an opportunity for us in the church to, I think sometimes we rightly, like our theme for our year is Speak Lord, We're Listening. That's our theme for our church. Great. Speak Lord, We're Listening. It should always be what we're living in, but that's our focus, is we're going to spend more time intentionally in prayer, in listening, in leaning into what the Holy Spirit is speaking to us. And I also think that we can use that to say, you do this, you do that, you do this. God will speak. Like, we're listening, but we're waiting for him to say something. And he obviously spoke through his word. And, when people are saying, well, I don't know, I'm just waiting for God to confirm that. Well, first of all, what you're telling me, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I obviously would never say who they are, but what they were saying was sinful. I'm just waiting to see if God would confirm this. No, that's sinful. The Bible says that's wrong. He's not going to confirm it. You can pray and ask as long as you want. Yeah. He's never going to confirm that, because he's already said in his word that is not That's sinful and that's wrong. And I think sometimes it takes those practical things to say, no, don't drunkenness. We don't talk about that a lot in the church. At least I don't see a lot of pastors talking about how far is too far with alcohol. What does that look like? We'll say what drunkenness is bad, but what is drunkenness? We don't talk about that a lot. Well, everyone handles their liquor differently. Yeah, fair enough. But if you aren't willing to drive, yet but I'm not drunk. What does that say about our relationship to the Holy Spirit? We think about the practical things. The reason laws are in place is to help. What is Paul talks about? He talks about the law. It was incomplete, but what it was intending to do was to actually bring freedom to us. And now in freedom in Christ, we're not under the law, but the law was there initially to bring freedom. Yeah. And I just think that, I don't know, I think sometimes that practical gets missed. So it's a good reminder.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we can't assume that people know how to obey or just apply the word. And I think what then happens is people feel a lot of just conviction or guilt, like, I just don't do that. I don't pray enough, or man, I should be sharing the gospel, or Sabbath. I was like on a 1 to 10, I'm hitting a 2 on Sabbath. And they just live with like a guilt. But if you could start giving some like practical applications that are palpable to begin with, I think a lot of people will start feeling like, not just, I'm doing a good job, but like they'll feel the fruit of obedience.
The last kind of theme here before we finish, you talk about all these different, or I talked about your bridge building. And as I've been to your events, there's people from different denominations, different backgrounds, different theological beliefs. How do you build those bridges with people as somebody who's, being at an Assemblies of God church, the largest Pentecostal denomination, one of the larger denominations in the United States, in the world. I mean, 70 million people in the world plus. So I'm not short on network opportunities, if that makes sense. Even in the state of Minnesota, I think it's almost 300 Assemblies of God churches just in Minnesota. And so there's plenty of opportunity for me to find connection in my own tribe, for lack of a better term. But then we have ARC, and we have Think and Q, and all these different opportunities for us to be connected. I find myself having many opportunities to get connected. However, I could easily just stay in my own group. You've intentionally, and that is kind of part of Think, Q, and all of what you guys have done, have intentionally bridged that. How do you think you've been able to do that so successfully, where many have tried and not been successful at it?
I think desperation helps unity in a lot of ways.
Okay. What does that mean?
I told you earlier, I think Tim Keller is one of the few Christians who's been able to be on everyone's team. Like the Pentecostals like him, the Baptists like him, the non-denominational people like him. And I did eventually get to know him more. And I got to interview him once in New York at a big conference. And I asked him, because before I say what I asked him, is I was asking, a lot of the New York Christian leaders are pretty united. I'm not saying all of them, but they know each other. Some of them know each other for over a decades even. And I was like, who's helped with how? Like, do all you guys know each other? Is there someone or organization or something you guys committed to doing regularly? And a lot of people, he's not the only one, but a lot of people did point to Tim Keller. They said he helped use a lot of his influence to get our city together across business leaders, church leaders, nonprofit leaders, and ideally next-gen leaders. But to get the Christians who have a mutually invested interest in the welfare of New York to be on the same team for our city. And New York needs a lot of unity. I don't think one church, no matter how big or great it is, could change New York. And so that conference, actually, he had a unity conference he did there of sorts, where he brought all those pockets of the city together, came to Dallas, and this is the one where I met, briefly got to meet him, and I basically asked him when I brought these hundreds to that conference, and I asked him, "Hey, are you excited about this?" Because they replicated the New York conference in Dallas, Texas. Very different city than New York City. Yeah. It's like an interesting next step, because very lost city,
or Chicago,
exactly, Philly, something like that. And I was like, but there are a lot of churches. I think it kind of makes sense, and when I asked him, are you excited about it? It was the day of the conference. He's like, no, not really. And I was like, just surprised. Like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, he was honest. He's a pretty blunt guy, I guess. And he just said, I don't think this is the best first city to do it. And it's not like he's the head of this organization. It was other team that did it, but he was the like face of it in a lot of ways. Like they leveraged Tim Keller is going to be here and he did this in the city. But he said, I kind of got outvoted. There was more people that thought, Dallas is such a great city, big churches, a lot more generous giving towards
share.
it. Yeah, it's like it technically makes sense what he said for unity. His line was, he said, Dallas isn't desperate enough for unity. And he said, Philadelphia would have been a better pick. Or that's why in other countries, Christians don't really fight over the things we fight over in America, missionaries, and because they're like, oh, we're like some of the only ones here. And so they came to Dallas, and that really marked me a lot. I was 24, and I knew he was right. Technically, he would go on and say, churches in Dallas could not talk to each other for like 10 years, neighboring churches, big churches, not even know anybody in this other church and the other staff, never meet, never talk to each other, and probably still be really successful in number wise. And he's just like, you got to have desperation. And I kind of thought about for us as young leaders, that's why I'm like, well, I can't change what was or change what is for the whole Church of America, but I could start trying to get the next generation of Christian leaders that are coming up, and one day we'll be at the table, if you will, of influence. Like you said, you're on the strategic lead team, 6 people. I gotta assume you're the youngest by a couple years.
Yeah, by maybe 7 or 8. Yeah.
And so that's happening where the leaders who 7, 6, 8 years ago were coming to retreats, building relationships with these people, now are becoming the influential people and the up and coming leaders at these other churches, nonprofits, businesses, different industries. And I just was like, what's great is we are desperate, like for our generation. The numbers for our generation, especially 7, 8 years ago, luckily we're starting to see somewhat of a quiet revival that's happening that we are sensing, and I'm excited about. But that desperation, I think, is why, especially the young pastors gathering I do, I'm doing one in Orange County. Some of the leading, pioneering, fastest growing, unique young pastors leading young adult ministries, church plants, all that. They're so generous to help each other. They're not like, oh, I don't want to share my secrets of what's working. They're like, dude, let's jump on a call, my team, your team. They're all about helping, because they're like, none of us we got to help each other to reach our nation of next gen. And so my hope is, that continues to bleed into the next couple decades as we continue to rise in leadership. But desperation was a huge advantage. While when things were flourishing, it's easy to not prioritize other things. Last thing I'll say is, I interviewed Keller again for, going back to the interview. So when I interviewed Keller and knowing all that he did to unite the city, this was a couple of years later after I met him that first time, I asked him, hey, why, not even why, but how do you give so much time to other people's things when you got some of your own stuff going on that's pretty big? You are a pastor of Redeemer, you're writing tons of books, you're a family, you got a wife, you've got kids. He's leading Redeemer city to city. So you're church planning and helping others. How do you go and help other churches when, I would say my experience is, it's not that any pastor I've ever met thinks unity is bad. All of them think it's good. Do they prioritize and tie time to it? Is harder. But it's usually they're just so busy. They got so many of their own fires they got to put out to shepherd their people well, problems they got to solve. It's not a lack of desire, it's a lack of time, because y'all are stretched in so many different directions. And so I was kind of asking him, how do you do it when you got so much going on? And he said, one, he used the word tithe. He's like, I think every pastor needs to tithe a little bit of time to the kingdom, other people's churches, and the success of other people's churches. And I like the idea of tithing your time, because we all know it's not the majority. It's not even a half. It's just a percentage that I am going to say yes to the thing that's totally outside of my group or my norm or what's familiar and easier for me. And then 2, he kind of quoted this thing where he said, in the body, cells that only benefit themselves I don't know if you know this, but the cells that only benefit themselves in our body, we have a name for them. And he said they're called cancer. And he said when cells only benefit themselves in our bodies, they are called cancer. And he said in the same way, churches that only benefit themselves are a cancer to the mission of God. And that's why he ties 10% to the kingdom. And I mean, of course, he's passed now, but those things happening in the earlier years of my ministry life definitely were drivers to be like, I want to try to change that in my generation. I can't change all that has been, but I think I could change some of the future of the church.
Yeah, well, I think you are making a good dent in doing that, and seeing people that have come together that are building those connections, that are building relationships, not just in ministry, but also in influencing and in business and in other areas. I think that, yeah, it's inspiring. It's something that we've committed to, having our own network as part of our church to help other people, doing conferences and training events all over. I've seen my dad live in that way. And he's just, the thing that I noticed, and you mentioned it kind of at the beginning of this too, how do you know somebody in a green room is like a great connection? It's how generous they are with what they're giving to you. They're wanting to give more. And I've seen him embody that and live that out, to where the generosity of, no, you take it. I don't need it. I mean, early on, I think the way pastors did that was use my sermons, take it, we'll package it up and you can use it. Yeah. Now there's so much content out there. Maybe it looks a little bit different, but I do think that generosity begetting more generosity. And then this, it's the principle. It's not the prosperity, it's just the God we serve. When you are generous, 2 Corinthians 9, sow sparingly, reap sparingly, sow bountifully, reap bountifully. When you give more, God just wants to honor you in that way.
Yeah.
And I've seen it to be true. You give that time to other churches, then you get ideas, you get friendship, you get connection. You can help connect their staff to your staff to make each other better. And ultimately your church ends up benefiting from it as well. Yeah. And so there's so much generosity there, that being that Andrew to say, no, I'm connecting it and I'm so happy for them, rather than, oh, I wish I would have never done that.
Yeah. A quick, maybe final story is I said earlier, I just think there's like a freedom and a weight lifted when you have a giving posture. You walk into a room and you feel nervous. Like the enemy will go after us often when we get invited to things. It's like, I don't belong here. Everyone else is cooler than me. These are my people, and everyone else here knows each other. If you like go in not thinking like, how can I gain, or just even thinking about self, it's more like, how can I add value? Like I pray that, and God, is there someone here I could connect, someone I can encourage? Is there someone here who could help me and I should know and it would help others? Like going in prayerfully. And then 2, there's a story I saw, because I think a lot of that posture and giving that we're talking about applies to preaching, because I know you're saying a lot of leaders here that listen, and I think all leaders generally speak in some form or fashion, whether it's a boardroom to preaching to even like discipling our kids with intentionality. I saw this random story. It's such a random story to influence so much of my philosophy of speaking, but Michael Jr., do you know who he is, the comedian?
Yeah, he's been here before.
I cannot find this YouTube video anymore, but he has a story from like the early 2000s. Like the quality is not the best, but in the video, he's got this video where he talks about how he was kind of empty inside, because though he was on all these different platforms doing comedy, it shows him like on Jay Leno, shows him on all these big shows, and he said it was kind of catching up to him that it wasn't exciting him anymore. And apparently he was at the Apollo, which is like huge for a comedian to be at, I believe, and he said he just performed at the Apollo, was about to go do another show, but he left the first show and was kind of like down, and goes outside, and he says he saw a homeless person, and he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna go like talk to that homeless person. He doesn't know who I am at all, and which was kind of refreshing, I think, for him. And he said, I'm just gonna try to make him laugh. And he said as he was like making the homeless person laugh, just connecting with this guy, it was like filling his cup to do that. And it really, the epiphany hit him is that the reason he's like losing, or it's like eroding a little bit of his soul, was something to the degree of like, because he's trying to like get laughs from people, was his language. Is I'm trying to go in there, I'm just always trying to get a laugh. From childhood to now, often comedians are always been funny, and they're on this like mission to get laughs. I've heard John Chris talk about it with Carrie Newhoff. Is like, you just get on this, like it's like a high, it's like a drug of getting laughs. And he said, but then with the homeless person, I went in with a mission. I want to make him laugh. I can't give him I don't know why I can't change his life, but if I can make him just laugh, make his day a little bit lighter. And he said he went into the second show. I was like, I'm just going to try to give him laughs, which is so crazy because I bet for whoever watched the first show and the second show, maybe it felt different, but it was probably a lot of the same content.
Right.
But there's a posture of like, I'm just gonna give. And for me, I really convicted and convinced me, I want to have that posture when I preach. And I think for young speakers, we often are still trying to prove ourselves. We're still trying to like learn how to not be whoever our favorite speaker is. We're learning how to find out who we are as a communicator. And so like I have a saying before I preach, last couple of years I say is like, I've got nothing to gain. I've got nothing to prove. I've got nothing to lose. I've got nothing to earn. Like I just have people to help. And if I go out there like excited to help, then it's interesting is when I think authority comes, I don't know if authority can come from the Holy Spirit when you're trying to use your gifting to just get something from people, because they become like an instrument. They become stepping stones to your glory. But if you're going in like, I really want to help these people, I do think the Holy Spirit is like all about that kind of action and that kind of work. And I just like, we've both, I'm sure, known where you can just tell the Holy Spirit speaking through you. It's like a wave and you can choose, oh, I just want to ride this wave for as long as it's here. I sense that way more when I have a posture of, I don't want to get laughs or I don't want to get an amen. I just want to like really, really help people. And ironically, both people win. Like it is amazing. I get to be used and sense the Holy Spirit working through me, but also I feel an authority that goes way farther than my best words or passion or intellect could ever do.
Yeah. This morning at our staff meeting, I think I might be supposed to pray for this thing and kind of share this story. And I didn't want it to be about me. And then somebody else prayed something. And I just, right when they were praying that, I just felt the Lord confirming, you're supposed to do that after them. Like they needed to do that first in order for you to then go. And so then I went up and I did that. I prayed it. I shared this testimony. And then Pastor Rob, my dad, he said, I just had in my notes, I wanted you to share that exact story. And he goes, I guess I can cross it off now. Cool. But it just is this confirmation that when it's about you, you're going to know. And when it's the Holy Spirit leading, you're just going to be able to follow that wave. And yeah, I love that. I love the insights you've given us, both practical, spiritual, deep, simple, and you are doing it. You're literally bridging that gap between people. You're helping connect not just myself, but hundreds, thousands of other people that I would say point to, oh yeah, I've made a solid, great connection as a part of all that Grant is doing. And I just want to say thank you for all you do and the insight you brought to us today. Obviously, the podcast that you host and the teaching that you do and the events. I can imagine that it won't be long until I see you again soon. But thanks for being on.
Appreciate it.